Welcome to Vigilant News Memorial Day edition, everybody. We are going to be doing a chilled out and relaxed show from our various non-studio locations. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing good, Justin. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's a Memorial Day. No shortage of things that happened. There was a bunch of storms that happened this past weekend.
Oh yeah.
Trump spoke at the Libertarian convention, I believe, and I feel like it kind of went well, but there were some things that maybe didn't go so well. So we'll get into some of that. I have a couple little things we can talk about, but nothing really too major. But get into some bird flu stuff. What do you got for us?
Well, I just want to bring up the fact that the WHO, the World Health Organization, has failed to get an agreement on the next pandemic treaty, on the text of the pandemic treaty, which is something that kind of happens each year. They set these goals, they don't meet the goals, it gets pushed, they kick the can down the road a little bit. And so that happened again, but we're not out of the woods yet. And then there was, I think it was Derek Bros, our friend Derek Bros, interviewed Kentucky Rep Thomas Macy on APAC, the Federal Reserve, and central bank digital currencies. So I have a 4-minute interview that I think we should watch and comment on.
Excellent. All right. Cool. Yeah, well, guys, if you haven't already done so, go to vigilant.news. You can check out some of the links for today. You can also sign up for the newsletter. And we got a couple of announcements. We've been planning this event that we mentioned last time. I'm going to pull up the flyer for it here. So here is the event flyer, and it's going to be pretty cool. We've been like really trying to get some of the stuff set up for so that everything is kind of prepared and ready to go. So it's digital. DJT's digital birthday block party. What a mouthful! But you can go to DJT party.com. There's a little bit up there right now. I'm going to hopefully have the sign up page ready to go so you can sign up. So, but you can see it. This is definitely a legit event. We're going to have a bunch of cool stuff. Dauntless Dialogue agreed to come. We're going to have a Trump tribute section, a birthday party card that you can sign, and then we're going to send that off to Donald Trump. We'll have a lot of cool stuff. I won't say too much because we're still kind of actively planning it out, but it should be a great time. Anything you want to say about it?
No, I like the flyer you guys whipped up. I know you guys put a lot of work into this, so it's looking really cool.
Yeah, it's great. And We the Media is actually going to be participating in this. We got Ascent Nutrition who agreed to be a sponsor. So
Look at that
Maddie,
dream team there.
exactly right. So my beautiful and illustrious wife Maddie has agreed to do quite a bit of the creative work about it. So yeah, this is going to be
Uh,
fun.
Looks cool. And what was
Yeah,
the date? It's the I
the,
should know Trump's birthday, but
it's the 14th. How dare you? It's the
I blew
14th
it.
of June. So a few weeks away here. So we're trying to do with the impossible by getting an event whipped up pretty quickly, but there's so much interest in this man. Oddly enough, there's really like, as far as I could tell, there was no birthday celebrations that I've seen produced by anybody really. So this is kind of like the first of the people birthday party event for Trump. So if you're listening and you want to participate, we'll have more information. Definitely check our Telegram channels. And of course, vigilant.news. We'll have some stuff coming out here soon about where to go, but it's going to be hosted on Rumble. So we'll have the usual fun Rumble chats going on and stuff like that. And it should be a great time.
Groovy.
All right, so let's get into some stuff today. So I'll go ahead and pull up.
Well, I got some announcements of my own.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
You'll have to pull them up since I'm on my
Sure.
phone. But I got a article that just came out. Shoot, what was it? I guess it was Friday. My latest for Badlands Media. It's titled Maxwell's Mossad in a Digital Panopticon. It's kind of
Oh
like
boy.
the sequel to the one I did the previous week, Our Greatest Ally. Um, this one really gets into a lot of aspects of Israeli intelligence that you don't typically hear of. Everybody's heard of the Mossad and the IDF, but there's so much, it gets a lot deeper than that. So there's this agency that may or may not still exist, but was disbanded because of all the controversy surrounding it, called Lachem. and it's basically Israel's technology acquisition kind of espionage thing, like spying on the United States and other technologically advanced countries to get a hold of their classified technology, stuff like that, nuclear materials, very tech focused. So there was this big controversy in the 80s where a man, Jonathan Pollard, some of you guys might recall this, was basically a spy for Israel and was selling them nuclear materials for a while, and he was doing it through this Israeli operative Hollywood producer at the time. So there's like a whole story there, and then there's this other unit called Unit 8200, who is basically it's a part of the Israeli intelligence apparatus where they recruit young men, 18 to 22, I think is their demographic for recruitees. And so they spend these 3-4 years in Unit 8200, and then they are dispersed into the tech industry. So Unit 8200 is all tech focused, as far like big tech kind of stuff, not necessarily like the classified stuff like we were just talking about with Lachem, but more like, you know how we see the CIA sees people into the news and into Hollywood studios and stuff like that, and in the music industry. Unit 8200 is Israelis seeding themselves into the tech industry. And most of the time, most of the people graduating out of Unit 8200 will then go on to either start their own tech firm or become absorbed by one of the bigger ones that already exists, like a lot of the Silicon Valley tech firms. So they basically just spread out into all of the tech industry. And a lot of times they create these firms that are fronts for the Mossad and Unit 8200. There's some well-known apps that are included in this, like Waze, the navigation app.
Oh, man. Wow.
The Wix, the website creating software, all of that is Israeli intelligence. And there's a lot more. So we get into that and some other things, and the history of Robert Maxwell and the Maxwell family in relation to these this Israeli tech industry kind of relationship. So I don't want to give away all the secrets, but if you're interested in that and learning more about all that, definitely check out that Substack over on Badlands Media. The next thing I have, and I didn't even know this trailer dropped until, I talk to Adam every day from Dauntless Dialogue. He didn't even tell me that this trailer dropped. He might not even know. But this is the trailer for Men Behind the Curtain Volume 3. It was a series I started writing for Badlands at the end of 2022 and went pretty deep into 2023. I think I wrote the last part in summer of 2023. Well, Dauntless Dialogue picked that series up and has been making it into a docuseries. And the third volume is going to be coming out soon. And this is the trailer.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, this is a great series. Let's go ahead and take a look.
The 193 members of the United Nations have unanimously reaffirmed their commitment to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
We need nothing short of a paradigm shift, one that inspires action at revolutionary levels and pace.
There are some people who claim we are now in a deglobalizing world. We have to re-globalize this world. What we call the black swans, the unpleasant surprises which will come in our way.
That's why today I am committing the United States to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Wow.
It looks good.
Yeah, he does
I'm
a great job.
always surprised. Like, I write these things up and I have no idea what to expect when the trailer drops, when the actual movie comes out, and I'm never disappointed. Dauntless Dialogue, rather, is just incredible.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he does like I think better than Hollywood quality work in a lot of ways. Like some of these
Yeah.
documentaries from Hollywood are just terrible, and you know,
Yeah, especially Loyal 9. He's the guy. He's kind of like an anonymous military person who's been just kind of video editing for Dauntless, and everything he does like is of such a high quality. It's quite remarkable. I don't know where Adam found that guy, but he is very talented.
absolutely. And I had somebody shared an image of this image right here that I wanted to comment on real quick. So if you look, there's almost looks like one of those the typical like filigrees that are used in various forms of European royalty, something like that.
Yeah.
And think these are the colors associated with the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yep.
And the image said that there were, I don't know if this is 18. I haven't had a chance to look deeply into this, but it looks like there are three groupings of 6. So it's like 666 is what the image was saying. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised. So
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? But anyway, yeah, that looks great. I can't wait to look at that one. Any idea when that's coming out?
I think later this month. And another thing Dauntless related, if you guys haven't heard, I don't know if he's promoting this yet, but there will be a Dauntless Dialogue conference, I think this fall, if everything goes according to plan, in the Greenville area of, is that North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys are in the area, in Appalachia and in the surrounding areas and are interested in a meetup, I'm going to be going there. Justin will probably be with me, and Loyal 9, V for Veritas, Adam Riva, the man himself over at Dauntless, and maybe some other friends that we can scrounge. Maybe we can get True Reporting to come up there with us and some other good buds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it'll be a great time. I just talked to Adam about it yesterday, and he's really excited about it. So
Nice.
it'll be really awesome to get there. And it's always good to meet up, actually get face to face, eyeball to eyeball, as they say, as God intended. So it'll be a good time. So awesome. All right. Well, then what you want to grab the first slot of story for today?
Yeah, let's see what I got here.
All right, let me pull it up.
I guess we could start with this WHO pandemic deal. So, actually, I can pull it up pretty easily here. So it was the 9th meeting of what is called the International Negotiating Body, or INB9. All of these very disarming terms and acronyms for groups that have almost no purpose but to do one little thing. And for this international negotiating body, it sounds official, and it sounds like, these got to be people with credentials, people who are at the cutting edge of global health. But it's just rich people. It's Bill Gates. It's people who have no medical background. They're just the ones who are part of this negotiating body. And it's, representatives of different governments like China. So it's just a hodgepodge of people who have an interest in the pandemic treaty, which, as we've covered many times, is really kind of like a Trojan horse for the WHO to be elevated in the event of another pandemic and even just a global health crisis, which they've labeled climate change a global health crisis. So in the event of one of these crises or pandemic, the World Health Organization would become the de facto world government in that situation. And they've been trying to pass this for years now. James Roguski has been kind of trying to expose it constantly. That's his sole beat. He does a great job. We had him on the show last year. And I've been trying to follow it too. So I wrote a Substack last year called Behold the Trojan Horse that I dove deep into this. It's not just a pandemic treaty. It's amendments to the international health regulations, which is what, supposedly safeguards us from all kinds of stuff, but it doesn't really, because there's ways to sidestep it. But what they're trying to do with these amendments is basically bring about everything that you just saw in that trailer. The Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, they all kind of go hand in hand, and this pandemic treaty is creating a pathway towards achieving those things a lot faster. Is basically what it seems like. So anyway, what happened was that the agreement was they failed to reach an agreement. So, like I said, they're basically kicking it down the can a little bit. I'm trying to see when the next meet, because basically they'll kick it down the road and then they'll try to disseminate a bunch of propaganda for why we need this and how dangerous the next pandemic's going to be, and then they try to meet again and make it work. So not everybody that's part of the negotiating body is in favor of this. There's like people who have been who are part of the WHO, but aren't, I guess, just like card-carrying members of the cabal, you know? Right. So the negotiations have to go a certain way. There has to be certain optics. They can't just force it on us. And it's not a treaty, so it's not going to go through the Senate and get ratified because it's a convention agreement, which means that they don't have to vote on it. It doesn't have to be ratified. They just have to agree to agree, basically.
Oh, well, that's convenient for them.
Right. So for whatever reason, it's hard for me to read this article. But if you guys want to check it out, it'll probably be in our show notes. But yeah, they're just kicking the can down the road, and fortunately, it hasn't gone through. So, you know, a lot of people were afraid that another pandemic scenario would crop up because it happened in 2020. It just so happened to have affected the election, we'll say. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there who suspect that this bird flu thing or maybe something else or Marburg, like all these different viruses that they keep kind of telling us about in the media to, you know, crank up fear, might slip out sometime between now and the election.
Right.
Well, even if that does happen, this whole WHO convention agreement, pandemic treaty, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to be around. So I think their plans are somewhat thwarted, but it doesn't mean it's going away. As with all things, with the deep state, with the cabal, it never goes away. It just gets defeated here and there, and then they try again later. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, on the bird flu thing, I actually wanted to mention to everybody. So I put out an article on my older outfit, Stillness in the Storm. Still a bunch of great content on there. And this article is about agarikon mushroom. And at Ascent Nutrition, we actually sell one of the best types of agarikon mushroom. So agarikon is it's the one that Paul Stamets was talking about years ago. I mean, he talks about a lot of things, of course, but this is the one that kind of gets a lot of notoriety and apparently has a really powerful health imparting effect. They say it has antiviral properties. Right. And according to legend, you know, this is one of these things that, you know, I can't prove entirely, but the guy who told it to me, I have a lot of trust in what he says. And I definitely found a lot of discussion online about this, but apparently Paul Stamets received a report from...
an accident, right?
Exactly, from a lab that he wasn't necessarily supposed to. And this lab was themselves part of some biodefense aspect of the Department of Defense. And what they were talking about in the report is that agarikon mushrooms, and I think a couple other different types of mushroom, mycelium, things like this, have antiviral properties and basically negate and neutralize a lot of the biowarfare that they develop. And when Stamets found out about it, he was like, hey, what's going on here? Why did you guys send me this report? And then apparently a bunch of helicopters showed up at his place and he started getting harassed. And so, you know, was that true? I don't know. But I found a bunch of people talking about it. And more to the point, the question isn't so much as whether the story is true, but the question is the effect of these mushrooms true? And from what I was able to determine, that is definitely the case. So, or at least by every reasonable standard of evaluating these things, it seems like this claim that agarikon mushroom can help neutralize biowarfare and the viruses that are floating around, if you believe in that kind of thing, it seems to be true. So we at Ascent Nutrition, and this is going to be Ascent Nutrition sponsors Vigilant News, so I want to give a shout out to Ascent. And also just say, if you're interested in this, you can go to stillnessinthestorm.com and check out this article. It's obviously in the show notes, so I'll have it in the show notes at vigilant.news. And we are having a 20% off the entire website sale for Ascent Nutrition right now. It's going to be good through Memorial Day, so definitely make sure to use your your opportunity to grab a bunch of cool stuff. A bunch of people have been, and if you want to check it out even more, you can actually go to my Twitter, and I'll pull it up here, and I'll also make sure it's inside the show notes where you can see the coupon code for the 20% off. So yeah, so there you go, everybody.
Nice.
Yeah. So
yeah, in my own research about the Agaricon, I had to write copy for some Agaricon, like an article that will hopefully come out at some point. And yeah, it definitely seems to have either antiviral, if that's what you want to call it, or antibacterial, if that's the way you want to look at it, properties. And that seems to be, I mean, there seems to be a lot of actual scientific papers, not just, people saying things. So there's a lot there if you guys feel like looking into it. Obviously, skip the articles and go in, or the fact checks, and just go straight to the, the studies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's Memorial 20, by the way, everybody. So again, I'll have this all in the links in the description, so you don't have to worry about finding it. But yeah, definitely scoop that up. Don't let that bird flu paranoia get you down. So yeah, definitely check out Ryan's article. We'll have also that in the show notes as well. And then we got this next one up here, the Kentucky Rep one. You want to talk about
Yeah,
this one?
so personally, Thomas Massey, he's my favorite politician. He's my favorite out there. If he was running against Trump, it would be a real hard decision for me. He's always, whatever my initial gut feeling is on something, always seems to be reflected in his disposition towards that thing. He's America first, and the most. I mean, maybe there's other ones in Congress. I think Matt Gaetz and all these other people do good work, but no one is as staunchly American first as Thomas Massey. And because of that, he did not support the billions of dollars for Israel. So what did AIPAC do? AIPAC is one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the country. They started taking campaign ads out against him, and they put a lot of money into it. So this is him. There was the Libertarian convention, I think it was over the weekend. It was yesterday, actually. And he was there, and he was interviewed. I think it was by Derek Burrows. Yeah, he did. He interviewed Derek Burrows as a guy. We've kind of known him for, I guess, especially you, for like a long time, right? Like we published his work on Stillness in the Storm.
Yep.
He was one of these conscious resistance guys who was around well before the America First, Trump movement, but still kind of in the space of truthing. But, he's never been a pro-Trump guy.
Right.
But, he's a self-styled kind of libertarian type. And so I'm sure he was thrilled to see, Trump being booed on stage at the Libertarian convention. But he went on to go interview Massey. And I think this interview is worth playing because I know a lot of you know Massey and love the guy. So yeah, let's check it out and hear what he has to say about CBDCs, AIPAC, and the Federal Reserve.
All right.
What's interesting is over $300,000 of that money was statewide outside of my congressional district. In fact, those ads are still running. My race ended Tuesday, and AIPAC is still running ads against me statewide, which is political malpractice, political campaign malpractice, because it's going to elevate my name ID, and 2 years from now, nobody's going to remember what the ads were about. What's more is a super PAC associated with Senator Rand Paul has matched AIPAC penny for penny statewide on their ads. So Protect Freedom PAC is running positive ads for me statewide. The net result is, outside of my congressional district, even though any race statewide would be at least 2 years from now, there's been $650,000 of spending elevating my name ID statewide. So thank you, AIPAC.
You co-sponsored the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. Can you talk about the importance of bringing that issue back, which most people, especially here at the Libertarian Convention, learned about through Ron Paul?
Yeah, I joke that it's like the McRib. It's coming back, whether you like it or not. And the last time it was introduced was by Paul Brown. There were only two co-sponsors, myself and Ted Yoho. And I'm the only remaining member of Congress who sponsored it when Ron Paul was in the House of Representatives. What's fascinating to me is that 10 years ago, we got 3 co-sponsors on this bill. Spent 2 years getting co-sponsors and got 3. This time, coincident with the introduction of the bill, I have 24 co-sponsors. So what's happened since Ron Paul introduced the bill, last introduced the bill 10 years ago, and now? Well, you've seen an erosion of trust in institutions. We all know FBI, CDC, FDA, these institutions, DOJ, institutions which used to have a level of trust, probably misplaced trust, but some level of trust among Americans has been eroded from the things that we've learned. And so also the things that Ron Paul were predicting have come true. We've got massive inflation. Just in 4 years, we've seen 25% of the dollar evaporate. That's all enabled by the Federal Reserve. Yes, Congress is to blame as well, but we couldn't get away with that. We couldn't have monetized our debt during COVID without the Federal Reserve. And so that's why the time has come to reintroduce that, and I think that's why we see 10 times as much support in Congress for the bill to abolish the Federal Reserve.
Just a quick follow-up on that related issue, the concern about central bank digital currencies. Obviously, you're raising awareness on this concern, and there are, the public worried about programmable money and how they might be just used against them in certain ways for their beliefs. What are your thoughts on how the people, obviously you're fighting from within the system, what the people on the street level who are worried about this can do to raise awareness or to push back?
There will be attempts to legalize central bank digital currency in Congress, and some of these are going to be sneak attacks. We've got to remain vigilant to make sure they don't slip these into other bills. The Fed can't yet do a full-blown central bank digital currency without some kind of authorization from Congress. Even they acknowledge that. But they're doing some test runs for it, and you're seeing some pushback at state levels against these test runs. But given what I've observed from government, they're probably more likely to use the big banks that they've enriched as sort of the central bank digital currency enablers and enactors. And so we got to be vigilant there as well.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Got to be vigilant, folks.
So, yeah, it's good to hear that he's a fan of Vigilant News. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was for us. It was a little nod.
Exactly.
A little calm.
So, he's spot on. This is one of the reasons we wrote that series Dirty Money a few years back, and we've been talking recently about reviving that a bit, and I just recently started doing a little deep dive into contracts and business law and things like this, because one of the hardest aspects of this is, well, what is an ethical business? Why do ethical businesses matter? Who's to say that a business owner can't just take all the money that comes in and pay the people he needs to run the business next to nothing? And the bottom line is that most people have no idea about any of this stuff, but there is a standard. The founding fathers absolutely knew about this stuff. And I think reviving it would be great. But what do you think about what he said?
I love it. I'm glad that he is in the know, and he's trying to be vigilant, as he said, regarding it. It seems like he already knows it's coming down the pike, and it'll probably get pushed through. I wish he would have said, even if it does, there are alternatives. Alternatives to CBDCs already exist. And, there's no reason why we can't be kind of preparing for it. And let's just assume it's coming, because how are you going to stop it? Right. But you don't have to use it, because you can use Bitcoin. Bitcoin exists, and everybody watching this probably has a subscription to some streaming service somewhere that's just pinging their account monthly for $10, $15, $20. You can set that up with River to be pinging every week or two, giving that same amount, 10, 15, some negligible amount of money into Bitcoin, and it builds up over time, and it has the potential to spike at some point. And I think when the CBDCs roll out and the whole picture comes into focus for a lot of people, you have freedom on one side and CBDs on the other. If that's how it plays out, G-Money seems pretty confident that that's how this is going to go. And if that is how it goes, you're going to see it spike because people are going to be so averse to CBDCs. I mean, the only people going to be using them are the same people wearing 2 masks in their car driving around. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be the most brainwashed people using the central bank digital currencies. So, yeah, something to keep in mind anyway. Maybe it won't play out like that, but that's the reason why I started investing in Bitcoin weekly.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. You know, we've got, I'm a member of a law group, and a good friend of mine, American Hypnotist, he's also a member, and there's some really cool things happening there. And having the ability to have control over your own currency is so huge. And, you know, the last thing I'll say on this, because it's a huge topic I'm really passionate about, but the bankers are the ultimate manipulators. They operate in this murky international law space where there's really no, you know, rules or ethics at all. They use manipulative means, so what they'll do is they'll force people who don't really know how these things work onto their CBDC agenda onto them, and then when they've gobbled up a significant amount of the market, they're like, well, if you want to play in our backyard, you have to use our point system, our money system. And so this stuff is coming, but if we're smart, if we know how money works, if we know how law works, and if we know how to defend and protect our property, which is what the founding fathers were all about, then we can create some really awesome defenses against this and live a far better quality of life as a result. So.
And there's actually something I'd like to show in the top secret Vigilant News group. It'll be the second one down for today beneath the Epstein clip that we'll show at some point.
Okay.
It's a truth from Donald Trump kind of talking about all this. So in case you thought that, you know, you'll wait for Donald Trump to explicitly tell you what to do and think about something, you know, if you're in that camp, there's a truth out there that is something worth looking at.
Yeah, I'm pulling up right now. Let me see if I can find. Okay, it's just a text one, right?
Yeah. It's just a truth that he posted. All caps, of course.
It's very important. That's how you know it's very important. Here we go. I think this is it right here, right?
Yeah, this is the one. I am very positive and open-minded to cryptocurrency companies and all things related to this new and burgeoning industry. Our country must be the leader in the field. There is no second place. Crooked Joe Biden, on the other hand, the worst president in the history of our country, wants it to die a slow and painful death. That will never happen with me. So, you know, in case you needed any more confirmation that it's not just all evil and that we should just use, I guess, fiat currency in a different form. I don't know. You know, it's people have a lot of varying opinions about this, but what I think, and this is total speculation, but they're going to roll out a central bank digital currency and a whole system that accompanies that, where you'll be using every place you can go and tap your debit card right now. You'll be able to do the same, only you'll be using digital currency, which is exactly what crypto is. So it's not too far out of the question to imagine that same system that they're going to utilize for the CBDCs will also eventually probably include other cryptos.
Yep.
So when they roll out the system for one purpose, it's actually maybe coming out for other things too. You know, I don't think that the entire it's capitalism, right? So if people are using Bitcoin, companies aren't going to be like, nope, we only take CBDCs, you know? So I think that in some ways the rolling out of the CBDC thing will be good because it'll create the infrastructure for us to easily use crypto in every transaction. And then also, you know, it's going to come down to whether or not people actually use the CBDCs or something else.
Yep, exactly. We're right back in the free banking era of the early 1800s, it seems like, in a digital way. So, you know, the reason that we lost the battle then is because we forgot how to use these things and know what money is and all that stuff. But we can get that knowledge back. So, yeah, it's really encouraging that he said that. All right, everybody. Well, let's move on to a few quick clips that I got here. So I have one from Mr. Rogan talking about some stuff. This is a short little one. Let's go ahead and play it and hear what he has to say.
When all those people were saying plant-based meat is the future, like it is. It's really bad for you. Not only that, it's monocrop agriculture, which is terrible for the land. It's terrible for living creatures. If one life equals one life, you're way better off buying cows and eating cows than you are buying corn. Because in order to grow a stalk of corn, a lot of shit has to die. And you're controlling enormous swaths of land with only one crop. That is totally unnatural, doesn't exist anywhere in nature, and in order to do that, you have to poison everything else. If you want to buy plant-based food and plant-based meat, you're supporting monocrop agriculture, industrialized farming, and you're supporting very unhealthy food.
The idea of a small group of people who meet in a ski resort town in Switzerland making the decisions about this for people all around the world.
And they're doing it on private jets.
Yeah, so there you go. I thought that's just so beautifully encapsulated a lot of the key issues with the plant-based food. Any comment?
No, I agree. The monocropping especially, it's terrible. So if you think you're doing something good because it says plant-based, you've been duped.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the issue. And he's right. I mean, in order for us to have, this idea that we're not harming other creatures, then we have to kind of harm a lot more in a subversive way. So, yeah, definitely keep that clip. Again, link in the description. I would like to keep this clip handy for anyone who's unfortunately been deceived into thinking this. And just to speak positively of the vegans, there are vegans who think that, eating Impossible Burgers is a good way to go. There are vegans who think that that's not necessarily the best way, and there's ways to grow your own food in a garden using permaculture that are far less economically and ecologically destructive. And I just want to give a shout out to them because that's probably the best way to do it if you're going to do the veganism thing. So, all right. So here is an article. This is coming from 100% Fed Up. Pfizer and Moderna to manufacture bird flu vaccines, HHS to produce nearly 5 million doses. This came out yesterday, and as I'm sure a lot of you know, the H5N1 avian influenza fear-mongering is in full swing right now. It's not entirely clear to me, like, if this is one that they're going to pull another global pandemic on. I think there was so much pushback from the global pandemic of COVID that they might be a little more hesitant, although they're certainly going to dangle that in front of our faces. And people like Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, various other globalist health gurus had said, Tedros is another one, have said that, there's another pandemic is coming. It's definitely going to come. Don't worry. So you need to be, supporting us in our globalist ventures and all that. So, but this is part of the reason why I wanted to mention the Garricon. And, I'm really happy to have sponsors like Ascent Nutrition in all seriousness, because there are ways to deal with these things. That's the really fascinating thing about the whole concept of biowarfare. Because if you think about it, in order for them to make people chronically ill so that we actually want to take their horrible medicines and be part of their horrible healthcare system, they have to do a lot of things against us. I mean, our world is filled with like a whole ecosystem of toxins. And you kind of need to be involved in a lot of it. You need to be eating crappy food, putting your phone to your face every day, breathing in chemtrail air, like all sorts of stuff. And then after all those things have been inflicted on your body, then it tends to work. But if you're even remotely healthy, then it's not that bad. And certainly with things like agarikon mushroom and these other natural, amazing kind of like miracle plants like, hemp and things like this, you can mitigate a lot of these issues. So any comment on that?
No.
All right. Okay, so we got something from Armstrong Economics. And Martin Armstrong is a really awesome guy. He's got one of the most successful economic prediction forecast models called Socrates. And this piece of news he reported about a few days ago, and apparently it's Ohio that's prohibiting migrants from voting. So a lot of you know I'm writing a book right now about all sorts of stuff about elections. And as far as I can tell, it's going to be a really awesome, action-packed book with some of the best information that I've found anyway in it. I haven't really found a source quite like what I'm trying to put together here. So the fact that Ohio and people in Ohio, elected officials, are actually trying to prevent migrants from voting, you'd think that'd be like a standard thing. but it's not. And an analogy I like to use when we think about voter rolls and our polluted voter rolls, you know, it would be ridiculous for your house meeting, for your neighbor to come into your house meeting and start to say that, hey, you should have XYZ policy to manage your house, because your neighbor's not a member of your household. And that basic concept of the person's vote should not count unless they're actually a bona fide member of the jurisdiction or the place that the vote is going to have sway over is something that is very basic to human understanding. And yet in things when it comes to big elections, we are led to believe that migrants or dead people or people from other states or people who don't want to use the vote and properly at all, they want to use the vote to give the middle finger to somebody like Donald Trump, that vote should count. And it shouldn't. The only votes that should count are votes that are made in good faith by bona fide citizens or members of the community for which the policy that is being voted on is going to be applicable. And for Ohio to do this, I think it's just an amazing step in the right direction. And I'm glad Martin Armstrong reported on that.
Yeah, it seems like common sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it really is. So, so with this next one here, I'm sure you guys have heard, Trump got kind of, he went into the battlefield, which is one of the reasons I love Trump so much. He's not a guy that cowers away from a good fight. And he's not a guy who's going to sit on his hands and keep his mouth shut to make people feel better if what needs to be said needs to be said. And this clip from the Libertarian Party, I think, is a perfect encapsulation of that. So let's go ahead and play that, and we'll have some commentary.
Think of this. First time in U.S. history that a presidential candidate of a rival party will address the convention of a party that is presumably gathering to nominate its own candidate. Now I think you should nominate me, or at least vote for me, and we should win together. You heard those words. Nominate me or vote. Vote for me. Because the Libertarians want to vote for me, and most of them will. And it's very important. Because we have to get rid of the worst president in history. And together we will. And without it, there's a risk that we could have 4 more years, we won't have a country left. So what is the purpose of the Libertarian Party getting 3%? What is the reason to take a chance of having this horrible president destroy our country, which he will do in far less than 4 years? It's not going to take 4 years. That is why I'm committing to you tonight that I will put a libertarian in my cabinet and also libertarians in senior posts. Pretty good. That's pretty big. Or you can keep going the way you have for the last long decades and get your 3% and meet again and get another 3%. No, you want to make yourself winners. It's time to be winners. You have a lot of common sense. It's time to be a winner.
All right. So yeah, it was not exactly a warm reception at the Libertarian Party. Any initial comments?
Well, there was mixed. So some people were cheering, a lot of people were booing. Really, what it comes down to is there's libertarians who actually think about it philosophically and will inevitably probably vote for Trump because what the else are you going to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then there's the people who, you know, it's just like anything. It's a cult of personality. And I think Derek Bros suffers from this. And I think the second comedian David Smith and all these, like, I'm edgy. I kind of know what's going on in the world. I'm all about freedom, but I'm just not going to vote for Trump because it's not cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like there's a lot of those kind of people who I'm sure don't have any other real, like, alternatives that they could offer, like, or even like a very well put together argument for why they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of those people in the audience. There's also a lot of people who support him. So it's kind of like it's a hodgepodge, but definitely, like, if you're calling yourself a libertarian because you need like a social group, you're probably going to be one of those people that's a bulk of them who are just like, I'm not voting for him because he's just another politician. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think there's a lot of that going on. I don't think that there's a lot of like real. I haven't seen very good arguments to the contrary that offer an alternative that is realistic. You know? So,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on that there's from a sociological and psychological perspective, which I've been studying quite a bit lately because I'm doing a lot of kind of market research and trying to figure out why people consume media and take the positions they have. And this is something that Cabal's been studying for years. And the early 20th century explosion in propaganda and press relations is kind of a reemergence and a recrystallization of something these guys have known for a very long time. And what that is that you're driven so much to express the ideas that matter to you at a personal level that you will often cut your own nose off to spite your face sometimes. And when it comes to politics, that is absolutely true. Like, if you think about it, politics, especially in the modern age, is very much like a battlefield. And you have to, there's not a lot of principled, successful thinking that can happen on a battlefield. You might be saying, and this is an analogy we've talked about before, that, well, you know, I'm on the battlefield, it's World War II. I see some Russian soldiers who have fallen, and the Nazis are coming over the hill here, and I just ran out of ammo, but I don't want to dare touch a Russian assault rifle. I'm going to use only American assault rifles because that's the only thing I use. I'm a very principled person. And it's like, well, you maybe the basis of your principles is right. Like, you know, you want to support the American economy, all these kind of things, and that might be true. But at the end of the day, if the battle at that moment is you better have any gun you possibly can, even a Nazi gun, so you can fight off the Nazis that are coming over the hill, or you have nothing and you'll die. And then on top of it, you won't be able to defend your nation because you're dead. Then your principal position ultimately got you killed because you weren't strategic. And I think when we can boil a lot of politics to this very similar situation, there's a lot of people who vote not because it's strategically the best thing, the best choice they can make in that moment, even if it's not the best thing that they want ultimately. And if you're a libertarian, you know, we've been to libertarian events. I've studied a lot of the libertarian views. That there's a lot of stuff in there that makes a lot of sense. But in the greater battlefield, if you're not being strategic, then you might throw what little contribution you have available to you in the trash because you're trying to take a principled position. And effectively, you know, what a really good example of a principled position is the people that light themselves on fire in front of the White House. Like, you know, you're going to make a statement, but is it really going to move the needle in the right direction? And this is ultimately everybody's choice. So I'm not trying to like pass judgment on anybody. You can make whatever choice you want. If you want to vote libertarian, go for it. But I think what Trump was speaking to here, and this is why I'm saying this, is that it's this practical, strategic position. It's like, listen, libertarianism is amazing. And maybe the best choice the Libertarian Party can have and the Libertarian movement can have is to vote for Trump, actually get somebody in the White House who's sympathetic to the Libertarian view, because the alternative is not to vote for Trump. And who else is going to get in the White House? Is it the globalists? You think the globalists are going to give a damn about your libertarian views? Hell no. So, yeah, I think, you know, in closing of this little rant, that this is a takeaway. This is a lesson I certainly had to learn quite a bit when I was younger, is that I might get really passionate and heated and think that I can wake people up in 5 minutes by telling them about cures for cancer or stuff like that, but I might not do that, and in many cases I didn't. And what I actually did was destroy what little clout I had. And now I had to make my life a little harder. And I think everybody could learn the lesson of, let's be strategic. Support your principles, believe in your principles, love the truth that you think is important, absolutely. But don't cut your nose off to spite your face, because you might be doing yourself a major disservice, and the thing you care about might not get advanced because you didn't take the step you could have in the moment. So.
Amen, brother.
All right. So let's see. Let's get to, I think that's basically all I have. I have one little clip I wanted to play in top secret, but did you have anything else you wanted to share before we kind of start to close out the show?
Not really, no. I just hope everyone's having a good Memorial Day. This is a pre-record. Obviously, I don't know if we mentioned that. And by the time you guys watch this, me and my mother will be out enjoying what is probably going to be kind of a cold Memorial Day here in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I just wanted to mention this. I'm sure you guys have seen this. Storm Has Arrived 17 posted this awesome video. I think it's actually from the 2020 era of this guy, black dude. He's left, like, I think he's at like a BLM protest.
Yeah.
And he, this gal, I think the gal is Millie Weaver, if I remember correctly. But she's like, hey, why don't we go test some things? Let's go and talk to the Republicans and the pro-MAGA people and see how you're embraced. And then I want to go talk to some of the leftists and see what happens there. And she gets totally trounced by some of the leftists. So great clip, great situation to talk about with respect to, just basic decorum and what we need to do as people in order to win these greater spiritual battles, because it's being mean and nasty and throwing mud in people's faces isn't necessarily going to get the job done. So all right, so let me move on to this last clip here. So this is Senator Chuck Schumer, so I'm going to play the clip and then I'll read a little bit that I wrote for it and we'll wind down.
Now more than ever, we're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here. Now more than ever.
So there you go. He's kind of saying the quiet part out loud here, which is basically that, we're going to try to help the dreamers. We're going to help these immigrants get
dreamers.
The vote, and the dreamers. I didn't know this. I've heard the term like a bunch of times in the past, but then I did a little research on it somewhat recently, and apparently it refers to the idea that, the American dream is something of value, and that's why people come here. Did you have anything you want to comment on? It sounded like you were trying to say something.
Well, it's just like, they come up with these terms, and then with the terms anchored all this other stuff that makes it feel a certain way. It's just like fifth gen warfare kind of stuff, where, and it's so obvious these days. We see these terms come up. They're tied to specific social movements or certain political agendas, and then they get repeated on TV shows and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. Like, it's very obvious what they're trying to do. It's clear that the election is part of it and factors in somehow. So yeah, if people can't see for what it is, then I don't like the people who aren't seeing it right now probably never will. Right. And it's like, does Chuck Schumer? He looks like a villain. He just looks like a villain. Does it seem like this guy just has a big heart and just wants all of the immigrants to come into this country and live great lives? Because that's what's going to happen. I mean, the country's going to implode, and they're all going to go down with the ship too.
Right.
So, obviously there's something else to the whole scheme here, and it's not just. And look at all the people behind him too. These other folks. It's like they are. It doesn't feel genuine to me. It doesn't feel like this guy just is thinking about all those dreamers out there.
100%. Yeah, and I'm writing an article right now about the weaponization of immigrants, and this is not a new thing. So you might be looking out into the current landscape and seeing all these illegals coming over, many of them not from Mexico or Central America, and you might be thinking, wow, this is crazy, I can't believe they're doing this now. But in reality, they've been doing this kind of thing for a very, very, very long time. Like, they've been using immigrants to destabilize various target nations. And when I say they, I mean, the death cult, the globalists of various ages. It was very well-known example in Rome, where a lot of the Visigoths and things like this were basically immigrants of their day, and they were brought in to try to destabilize things in a power struggle that ultimately ended up costing the Roman Empire. So one of the more notable examples is during the 1800s. In the 1860s, we had the potato famine of Ireland, and the Great Britain area, I will say. And apparently that itself is a somewhat complicated story, that it was kind of a cover-up for a lot more mass murdering that was happening on the part of the British nobility. But I won't speak to that for a moment. But what I'll just say is that there's a formula that they use, and this is the formula. This is what I put in this. So the globalists have been using levers of economic power and legislative takeover to control the flow of populations for a very long time, aka weaponized immigration. We're seeing it happen right now at the southern border of the U.S. So what are they going to do? Well, first, over the course of decades, globalists destroy an economy to drive lower-income workers out of a nation and into sweatshop-style wage slavery. So that's very easy for them to do that. Once they've gotten control over the levers of economy, so either through banking or finance, or through, putting people like the Rockefellers or steel magnates in there, which is what happened in the 1800s and the early 1900s, then who gets to decide what industry gets built up? And it's the globalists, and that's because of that, they can control the price. Right now, we're seeing a price manipulation on massive scale. They're weaponizing the prices by having weaponized inflation. And you might be thinking like, oh, no. Well, the people paying stuff, the prices that are set by the consumer. And it's like, no, they're not. Like maybe back in, a former day, you could haggle to get a price set for something, and that price would affect the cost of things in the market. But what really happens is that price gouging is just a standard practice in our economy. And it's basically coordinated by globalists to drive up the cost of things so that you, the little man, can't actually do what you want. You have to work for the man. And most of the people in the truth movement are themselves, and myself included, have worked for the slave system at one point or the other, because it's like, what other choice are you going to have? And that's part of how they do that. So they make things really high, expensive, and then those people that are in disenfranchised countries, they go off into another place. Then what do the globalists do? Number two, they destroy border security, encourage open borders, and otherwise generate a pretext for sanctioning mass illegal immigration in the target nation. And right now we're seeing this in U.S., in Europe, in France, in the UK. Three, globalists use a trigger to activate their careful plans to cause mass migration and immigration, like war, natural disasters, or a pandemic. We saw wars almost always cause massive destruction in infrastructure. So there's no ability for large numbers of people to live in an area because things are all destroyed and messed up. So what do they have to do? They become refugees that go off into another place. And then four, the globalists use politicians and celebrities to push the idea that mass illegal immigration is morally justified, cool, and an aspect of fighting the man. And in the example I had mentioned earlier, the potato famine, huge numbers of Irish people, Irish Catholics in particular, came over in the mid-1800s, around the mid-1860s. And what happened is they were embraced by the then burgeoning Democratic Party. The Democratic Party did back then what they're doing now, just promising illegals a venue to become a citizen, to start, support your families, to embrace the American dream. And they basically did that. The Irish Catholics came over in massive numbers. It wasn't just the Irish Catholics. About 30 years later, it was the Italians. And so there were various waves of people that were coming over in the 40s and 50s. It was the Puerto Ricans and things like this. And they were all used basically to vote Democrat in various schemes of electioneering that involved, giving disenfranchised immigrants a little bit of piece of the pie. And for that, they would get a loyal vote out of it. And then in the 1960s, they kind of flipped the script because a lot of these immigrants started to actually become have their own entrepreneurial ventures. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I can't really run my business successfully if you're constantly bringing in disenfranchised people and paying them less. And now my cost to run my business goes up. And so that's in the 60s is when you started to see a lot of these people that had historically voted Democrat starting to vote Republican. And so the reason I bring this up is that we're seeing another version of it right now. All these people that are coming in, the 11 million that he mentioned, are going to be encouraged to vote a certain way. And not knowing that in the process of doing that, they're going to undermine the people that have been here for longer. And then in a few generations, the exact same thing is going to happen to them. Because, don't think for a second that this Agenda 2030 situation where they're going to push everybody into massive cities and feed us bug paste and have us get all tripped out and play video games like you all know Harari wants to do, is going to be some beautiful utopia where everybody can live in harmony and sing Kumbaya. So, so there you go. So that's my second rant of the day. Don't forget, everybody. Let me pull up the our sponsor here, Ascent Nutrition. They are doing a Memorial Day sale. You can use Memorial 20 at checkout. Everything on the store, all those wonderful products you see right there, which, the founder of Ascent Nutrition, Lance Shuttler, he designed a lot of these things to protect us in this incredible world that we're living in, where money, the food, the things in the air, all sorts of things are designed to make us sick. But there are things like a Garicon mushroom, which you can buy at Ascent Nutrition, that can directly benefit you when it comes to protecting against this bird flu. The pine needle extract has been known to have, support lung and respiratory and heart health in relation to some of the other jabs that we've received in previous pandemics. I'll just put it that way. So really good stuff. Anything you wanted to mention about that or anything in closing?
No, I love the Ascent products, and it just reminded me I need to take my DHA algae oil yet today.
That's right. Yeah. Cleanest DHA. There was actually an article that came out recently, and Lance's DHA oil, the stuff that's for omega-3s, the stuff that people pay lots of money for fish oil, our DHA oil is the cleanest in the industry, and most of this stuff is not necessarily all that clean. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So, all right. Well, everybody, hey, really appreciate you tuning in on this Memorial Day. We're going to have some patriotic fun here. It sounds like you're about to go to a parade. How long does a parade last?
I don't know. I think it's happening right now, actually, and it's kind of cold, so we'll see.
Probably
what
not that long.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, definitely check out Ryan's article, the one that came out recently. Definitely check out the DJT event. We'll have more about that event here soon. So just mark the 14th, Friday the 14th, June 14th on the calendar for an awesome event. We're going to have lots of friends hanging out for that. So definitely spread the word. We'll have more about that coming out soon. And with that, much love, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Vigilant News.